Hello everyone, this is Nayamka and I hope everyone is having a awesome Sunday and that your weekend is winding down really nicely. I wanted to come on here and talk about forgiveness, and I'm not going to speak about it from an angle that I believe is familiar to you, because I actually, when this was sort of brought up to me, I had never heard of this before, or I've never heard forgiveness speaking, sort of spoken from this story element. And it is using the story of Joseph in the Bible. So, if you're not familiar with the story of Joseph, it is outlined in the book of Genesis, chapters 37 through 50. And I'll put that in the description. But Joseph, to me, is one of the most phenomenal figures in the Bible. He is absolutely a person of integrity, he's a person of excellence, and he was a person that was absolutely subjected to some of the most horrendous injustices that a human being could be subjected to in his lifetime. But yet he rose above them. He became the prime minister of Egypt, which was at that time the most powerful country in the world. But his accomplishments would have never have happened if he had not forgiven his brothers. Joseph's forgiveness was not only tied to his life, but it was tied to the the success, the viability, and truly the lives of nations. And what I even talking about this right now, it's such a powerful lesson for me about forgiveness and how our forgiveness, on an individual level, we have to forgive because we don't want to walk around as these people that are just runneth over with unforgiveness, with hatred, with bitterness and resentment towards people. These are all things that the Bible says if you don't forgive, if you have bitterness, if you have resentment towards people, you are opening the door to all types of just evil, ungodliness, and just darkness in your life, that it manifests itself in different ways. So that's on an individual level. But by also walking in unforgiveness, the people that God is intending for you to touch and be a blessing to, you're stymieing the work of God in your life, which also hurts people. And on the flip side, when we walk in forgiveness, it just keeps the doors open in our lives for us to walk through them. And it's not just a blessing to us individually, it's a blessing to all the people that our lives can be a blessing to. It's a pay it forward type of deal. But going back to the story of Joseph, Joseph was, he was the favorite son of his father, Jacob. Also, Jacob's name was also changed to Israel, which is the nation of Israel. And from Jacob comes the 12 tribes of Israel, which is important to the story because Joseph had to forgive his brothers, who the 12 tribes of Israel came from his brothers. That's the whole thing about the nations being tied to his forgiveness. But Joseph's brothers could not stand him. They were absolutely jealous of him. And it wasn't anything that he had done. It was the fact that his father was just showing him outright favoritism because Joseph was the firstborn son to the wife, Rachel, that Jacob truly loved. He did not love to the extent the mothers of the sons of his other the mothers of his other sons. He didn't. Rachel was his beloved, and because Joseph was born to her, the firstborn to her, he had a younger brother, Benjamin, but Joseph was the firstborn, and Jacob, his father, was just showing him just outright favoritism, which is horrible to do as a parent, to make it evident to your other children that you love this other child more than them just because. So his brothers just they could not stand him. There was such a severe jealousy and a hatred towards him that they wanted to kill him. They wanted to kill him. And it was his oldest brother, Reuben, who diverted their plan to kill him. And he switched the plan up, and his intentions was to come back and get Joseph. But while he was away, his other brothers sold Joseph into slavery. Okay, sold him into slavery. And Joseph being sold into slavery, which one, being sold into slavery, living your life as a slave, meaning that you have been stripped of the concept of even being viewed as a human being in the sense of your free will. And now another person has forcibly taken your free will from you and has told you that you physically you are a human being, but everything else about you, the human aspect, is no longer exists. You're now under my control, and you're going to do what I want you to do. You're going to work for me for free. And slavery is a crime against humanity. And I can check out my website, nayamkawar.com. You can everything I have on their podcast, YouTube, blog. But one of my YouTube stories is about how the Bible condemns slavery, because which is nothing but the work of the enemy. People have actually used the Bible to justify slavery, even though the Bible tells us outright in the book of First Timothy, and I'll put the verse in the description, that slavery, the concept of kidnapping another human being and forcing them to work for you for free, that whole system of slavery is immoral. And it says it in the Bible. And people misusing words that are intended to sort of talk about maybe indentured servitude or employment. They misuse words in the Bible that talk about voluntary servitude, and they turn it into, oh, the Bible is okay with involuntary servitude. No, it's not. Jesus said, I came to set the captives free. But you can check out my YouTube story about how the Bible actually speaks out against slavery. That's on YouTube. You can find it through my website, nayamkawar.com. The link for the website is in the bio. But Joseph was, one, forced to live as a slave by his brothers. And during the process of being enslaved, Joseph was falsely accused of rape by a woman that was the woman of the household, of the house that he was enslaved in. She was just lusting after him. He was a good looking guy, and she was married, and she wanted him to engage in adultery with her, and he wouldn't do it. So she falsely accused him, and now he's falsely imprisoned. So he goes from slavery to being sexually assaulted by this woman to being falsely imprisoned because she didn't want to look like the adulteress that she was. And so because of his brothers, this man is subjected to some of the most inhumane treatment that a human being could be subjected to in their lifetime. Okay? Now, he comes out of and this is a story about Joseph that people will always talk about, is that Joseph came out of prison, and he went straight from prison to the palace. You know, you've heard some people say from the pit to the palace, which is one of the most amazing and inspiring stories in the Bible, that someone whose life just looks so destined to unfortunate events, which were some of the most unfortunate events that you could think of, his life is totally turned around in the blink of an eye. And now he becomes the prime minister of the most powerful country in the world at the time. Now, here is where his story, after he becomes prime minister and the famine hits this part of the world, and his brothers have to come to Egypt to get food, to live, to literally live. They needed food and the gatekeeper of that food was Joseph, which they thought he was dead. They didn't think he was alive anymore. Joseph had to come face to face with the people who brought so much destruction in his life. And guess what he did? He forgave them. And we live in a culture, we live in a cultural time right now in this season in our culture where as we're wanting people to, make atonement for their crimes against humanity, there's also a lot of people that are walking around right now and they're hiding behind movements. They're hiding behind just sort of wanting things to be righted, and they're hiding their unforgiveness behind that. And what'll happen is that how in the Bible in the story in the Gospels about the man and Jesus says, "Stick out your withered hand." If you don't stick it out, God will. If you have unforgiveness in your heart towards anyone for anything that anyone has done to you, if you have unforgiveness in your heart towards a group of people because of their crimes against your group of people, it's not to say something didn't happen. I am what I'm speaking to you is something that I have to walk out daily. It's not anything that I have not walked out and continue to walk out. Forgiveness is a continuous process. It is not something that ever stops. It's not something that ever ceases. You are constantly going to be put in a position where you have to forgive. You're going to constantly be put in a position where past offenses come up in your mind. And you will have to open your mouth and either pray for the person, pray for the people, or you're going to have to forgive. So I am not speaking anything to you that I am on the battleground of forgiveness with you. But I do know that as Joseph forgave his brothers, and his forgiveness of his brothers was tied to the lifeline of a nation. I mean, that's how important it was. And if you say, oh, well, that's Joseph. He was the prime minister of Egypt at the time. And, oh, that's not me. Actually, it is you. It's you, it's me, it's every single one of us. Our willingness to forgive people, regardless of what they've done to us, is a lifeline for us and every single person that our life is supposed to impact. Unforgiveness is poison. It's poison that spreads. And it hurts not just the person that's carrying it, it hurts people that they come in contact with. It hurts people that they're supposed to help. And we have to see that the power of unforgiveness is not just individual, it's on a collective level, it's on a community level, it's on a national level. You have to forgive. And you'll say, well, and also I hear people say, well, what about the justice involved and what has happened to me? Your unforgiveness is not going to bring justice about. It's not. It really isn't. The Bible says that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's not yours. And having unforgiveness towards people, whether on an individual level, on a community level, on an ethnic level, that's having unforgiveness doesn't change it. It just hurts you. And if the Bible tells us to forgive, who do you think is behind us not forgiving? Who do you think is promoting unforgiveness? It's the kingdom of darkness. Do you want to have partnership with the kingdom of darkness? I don't think most of us do. You forgive and you let God take care of the injustice. You don't take matters into your own hands by walking in unforgiveness and hate and resentment and bitterness towards people. And like I said, as I say it to you, I say it to myself. Walk in forgiveness. And do you know what I've realized is the greatest key to being able to forgive people like with an ease? That is truly walking in the love of God. The more that we are submerged in the love of God and walking in the love of God, the easier it is to forgive people. So I just wanted to share that with you all today. And check out my website, nayamkaward.com, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.